First up, a really interesting presentation around building trust in the digital economy, so something that's on everyone's agenda, I would imagine. So please, can I welcome to the stage Mr. Ben Jankowski, Group Head Global Media at MasterCard, and Will Swayne and Sanjay Nazerali from Carat.
Thank you. So to motivate you to stay in the room, we're going to, in the next 30 minutes, we're going to talk about one of the most important issues that we've talked about all day today. And not only talk about it, but provide, introduce some new solutions of how we're going to work with data. So I'm joined by Will Swayne, who is the global president, and Sanjay Nazerali, who is the global chief strategy officer. And we're going to talk about trust. Not a day goes by where we don't think about trust. Whether it's we don't trust governments, easy for an American today to say they don't trust governments, and people, because look at the people running for our government, so companies or people, and not a day goes by when we don't think about how we don't trust those people. You think about media, you'd think, what does trust really have to do with media? Well, every single person, every room I was in today, whether it was Charlie at the beginning, or whether it was all the speakers in the next room. I spent most of my time in the previous room today. We all talked about trust. I was on a panel earlier today. We talked about trust. So, and when you think about viewability or transparency or all the issues that surround trust, obviously they have a big role in media. But we're going to focus a little bit more on how it drives against consumers, because trust between agencies and clients. We're not here to talk about that, because that's it's a different topic for a different day. We've talked about it ad nauseum. We're going to focus around consumers. And the first thing to think about is, one of the first things we have to think about is data. So that's your cue to click the slide.
No, you're supposed to trust me.
Well, so there's so much data. I spared you the slide showing you all the millions of different information and data that's out there today. There's so much information out there, but it's a huge opportunity for us. But if consumers don't trust us, then we're nowhere. We have a great opportunity to be able to take advantage of data, but we need to be able to find the way to understand it through the consumer's lens and actually get them to be able to understand how we can, how to motivate and inspire them to be able to understand how we can make great decisions. Here's a quote from the data protection officer at MasterCard, and the mere fact that we have a privacy and data protection officer shows you how serious we are about it. So obviously in our industry, super, super serious issue. So for the rest of the presentation, we're going to talk about trust, the importance of it. We're going to talk about how we can identify ways to optimize and leverage it, and actually talk about some real-time applications for how some of the work that Carat is initiating right now.
Yeah. So data is creating a lot of opportunities and value. It's transforming the conversations that we're having with clients, because it's allowing us to talk about business outcomes rather than just media outputs. It's allowing us to have a much more richer view of people and the relevance in the communication that it can drive from there. And I think that those two things combined are making our industry much more relevant within the marketplace, because media is becoming the sensor for our clients' organizations. But if we are becoming more relevant to people, why are they not liking us so much? Ad blocking will cost our industry $40 billion this year. That's 14% of global ad spend. We're seeing browsers like Tor on the rise, and those browsers allowing people to browse anonymously. And then finally, there's a large percentage of people who just find targeted ads creepy. So why is this happening?
And it is strange, isn't it, that we have the ability to be personal and adaptive and valuable and to deliver stuff that's really meaningful to consumers now, and they're blocking it. It is quite interesting, and the reason ultimately will boil down to trust. It is creepy. Edelman PR does an annual look at trust ratings by country, sector, and they've seen a steady decline in trust in business over the years. And what's interesting is that decline isn't stopping. It goes down every single year. Even in the really high trusting countries, well, it starts slipping. What's growing, however, is the extent to which people state that they trust people like me. And what's also really interesting is how that's grown in almost direct line relationship with social media. So the way trust is scaling these days is through conversation. Hi. I'm going to trust that the door will close. There we go. It's scaling through social media. It's scaling through conversation. But as brands, we don't have a role in that conversation. I find out from 20,000 other people on TripAdvisor that that's the hotel I want to stay in, regardless of what Hilton Hotels says to me in its advertising. I don't need the brand to be part of that conversation. So the great challenge for us, I think as agencies and brands, is how do we earn a legitimate place in the consumer conversation? That happens through trust. Take a big, just a quick step back in history, because you could say, well, that's fantastic, Sanjay. So social media, social conversation is where trust's happening. So that's now going to be where we lob our ads, and we're just going to put all our money into paid social. And that absolutely misses the point of how trust is built in the digital economy. If you just rewinding a bit into history, if you look on the left-hand side, in the pre-media age, we trusted institutions, church, government, state. And how did trust get leveraged? Through the rule book. We had Bibles and statutes and things like that. Then, the heady days of, goodness me, then come the heady days of, see, that's called interruptive advertising. Then comes the heady days of the mass media age, like that interruptive advertising, and you get, the Emperor Don Draper appears, and people trust brands. And brands communicate to them through advertising. In the digital media age, that has morphed even further. People are trusting people. And the way that trust gets leveraged and scaled is through conversation. Now that sounds really obvious, but there's something really quite powerful going on beneath this. If you think about the pre-media age, we were asked to believe in stuff. Okay? We had to believe it. Believe it because I've told you that it's true. But then in the mass media age, that didn't change. I was told I was going to be butch and rugged and live in the mountains on a horse if I only smoked those cigarettes with the red triangle on them. But it was still belief. Now, this is where things have changed. Digital media is actually shifting the world from belief to experience. And suddenly it's about the experience of the brand rather than believing in metaphors or fictions about the brand that becomes really powerful. Now, you could argue that experience has always happened. I love this picture, by the way, and feel free to steal it. It's one of those lovely ones. This is rooftops in 1954 in Philadelphia. And the X's mark those households that have got air conditioning. And they cluster. For the simple reason, people talk to their neighbors. People experience what's going on in their neighbors' houses. The experience economy has always existed. It's just now it's scaled significantly, and that scale delivers business returns.
So if belief was about building in the age of advertising communications, a 30-second ad that would drive a reason to believe, there are many more tools and assets to our disposal now to build that belief today. And so whether it is VR that transports people to an experience without actually having to go there, is going to be transformative for for holidays, for hotels, for any kind of destination. Content is the voice of the digital economy. If I go onto TripAdvisor, I'm far more likely to trust a piece of content that comes from a person like me rather than from a brand. And TripAdvisor as a business is built upon communities, where there are networks of connections, and those connections are people. And within those people, there are influencers. So our ability to identify those influencers and ensure that they're advocating on behalf of the brand and getting that advocacy right is critically important. These are all new skills that need to be mastered in order to drive trust within the digital economy.
MasterCard is a brand. I'm blessed. I've spent 5 years at MasterCard. The MasterCard brand, the Priceless brand, has been around for 18 years. And it was baked in 18 years ago. It was established on a consumer insight that experiences matter more than things. It's not a piece of plastic you use to buy stuff. It's how we can enable and empower and make your life better and enable you to live a deeper, richer life. Capture those priceless things that can help you, your friends, and your family accomplish more things. So 18 years ago, we talked about prices, and we talked about experiences matter more than things, and we used to tell people about experiences. Like the evolution of what we've done is we've gone from telling people about experiences to actually empowering and enabling them with experiences, and we do a lot of that we work really hard to drive a lot of that through media, and I'm going to show you a couple examples. So first thing, I'm going to show you can you go back? I won't make you go back. All right, I won't make you go back, never mind.
I'm back.
First things first is we know this works. We know that people who are engaged with us have higher favorability. We know that people who actually have experiences, if you've got multiple experiences with us, the more you experience with us, the more time you spend with us, the higher value you become for us as a customer. So we've proven over time, over the last 5 years, and we've really focused on this, the more time we spend with you, the more valuable you are as a long-term value. Now that becomes hard to scale, and that's one of our challenges. Let me show you a couple examples. Now? We did an example in Poland, and this is obviously, I'm going to tell you, it's a great example. We developed a product in Poland in the restaurant category, which basically motivated, inspired consumers to spend more time with their friends. So rather than me talk about it, let's show the video.
Friday evening, we're in a top-notch restaurant in Warsaw. Fancy people, fancy food, but not such fancy manners. Look at them. Their bodies are here, but where are their minds?
Like every
here,
restaurant you've ever
staring at the screens, waiting for messages, looking for fun on, I don't know, YouTube. Different brands have tried to solve this problem, but usually it requires user involvement or simply it's a ghost. It doesn't work. MasterCard did something that really works. To restore the real meaning of meeting with friends, we've built this, the MasterCard Capsule, an interactive box which counts the time without smartphones. The rules? Simple. Put in your phones, start talking. No need to do anything else. The capsule communicates with waiters through a dedicated app. They can check if the capsule was opened or not and reward guests with prizes. The more time without smartphones, the greater the reward. We launched the campaign in 3 restaurants in Warsaw. From day one, it was an overwhelming success. In the first 10 days of the campaign, almost 500 people used our MasterCard Capsule. Our tables were booked for days in advance. People collectively spent 750 hours without their smartphones. On average, people who took part in the campaign sat for longer, spent more, and had more fun. Today, every day, 3,000 people have direct contact with our campaign through restaurants. From the very beginning, the campaign was acclaimed internationally. And guess what? After only 1 week, we began talking with 5 different international markets about local implementation. But let's get back to Poland. Over 20 restaurants declared that they also want our capsule. It looks like we're going to have an impact on hundreds of thousands of people. Let's leave the numbers. We inspired people to rethink their approach to technology. They have realized that in some cases, they don't need a smartphone. Well, almost don't need a smartphone. Put your smartphone aside. Start talking. Rediscovering the art of conversation. Priceless.
Thank you. Thank you. So by getting people to spend more time with friends, family, and not with their phones, they obviously have better experiences. And they, selfishly for us, they spent more money. They spent more money, they spent more on cards when they were in the restaurant, when they were having fun with their friends. We've been doing this for a while, so that's an example in Poland. Actually, we were one of the first next weekend when the Champions League final, when the kids walk out there, the player escorts walk out there with the players. We instituted that. We were one of the first ones to, invent that, 10, 12 years ago. So we've been doing it. We've been trying to drive experiences for a long time. Here's another example of how we've been able to drive experiences. We took a billboard. We were trying to drive around. We were trying to grow a restaurant business. We were also trying to help promote a charity. We have priceless causes. We literally built a restaurant at the bottom of a billboard in Times Square. So you're in Times Square, you're 30 feet above all the action, all the people on the street, and you're having a dinner experience. The picture there is with Marcus Samuelsson, who's a world-acclaimed chef. So Marcus Samuelsson, for a period of a couple months, had a restaurant next to a billboard at Times Square. And we called it Priceless Tables. It helped us grow our restaurant business. It helped us drive more money towards the Prices Cause, in this case, an organization called Stand Up to Cancer. We did one of those in 2014. Last year we had 9 chefs. We did 14 of them around the country. And next year we're going to do 50 priceless tables. Actually, here in Italy last year we did the same thing around Expo. We took the top floor of one of our issuing banks and we basically made it a restaurant where Michelin chefs came in, and I think it was a period of, somebody can correct me, I think it was for 4 or 5 months. We had lunch and dinner served by Michelin star chefs literally on the roof of what used to be an office building. So again, another example of how we're trying to really make it experience driven. Next example. The other thing we've done is around events. So we sponsor a lot of events. We did a lot around the Rugby World Cup. You may have just seen, we just talked about Rugby World Cup, and next door we were doing the awards. We sponsor Champions League. In the United States, we sponsor the Brits, which is a big music event in the UK. We also sponsor the Grammys. So rather than just making it one night of music, we've actually created a whole week around activating, whether it be concerts, whether it be a mobile van experience. We're really pushing hard to complement our big events with experiences to motivate and inspire consumers to surprise and delight them and use their cards.
So we're not saying flip all of your budget into content and experiential, because trust is more complicated than that. If I look at a watch and it says made in Switzerland on the back, I'm more likely to trust it. If I look at a suit and it says made in Savile Row, I'm more likely to trust it. And that's because provenance is really important within those categories. But provenance isn't important when it pertains to household cleaning products. And so it is complicated. So we have at Carat developed a tool that enables us to understand the drivers of trust and, importantly, how media can build those different types.
And how Will can justify his Swiss washing powder. But it is true, you can't just assume there is one type of trust for all types of products. Now, where does that take you? It takes you to the point where you have to try and break that down. So, what kind of trust? For which kind of products? For which kind of audiences? And indeed, in which kind of markets? Because, as Ben knows from MasterCard, there are certain activations which work brilliantly in one market, but they need a radical overhaul if they're going to work somewhere else, just because of the nature of the culture. So we have spent quite a long time developing a trust planner. It's called the CCS Trust Planner. CCS is the Consumer Connection System. It's a very long-standing, in-house proprietary system that we have at Dentsu Aegis. We spent quite a long time initially trying to think, what are the drivers? What drives trust for whatever categories? And there are lots and lots and lots of them. We have distilled this down to 8. It's still being distilled with the support of some academics. So I'm not going to take you through all of them, but just a couple. So top left, you've got competence. I trust someone because I know that they function. They've never let anyone down before. Basic reliability. I turn the tap on, water comes out. Number 6 over there is Will and his Swiss watch, and Ben and his Savile Row suit. So that's very much where provenance is going to give you something. Clearly, if you're German, you're a car, that might help, Very interesting that Rolex is a German watch that never really talks about its provenance, and we wonder why, because people will then assume it's Swiss, and it'll sort of trade on a provenance it probably doesn't have, which gives it a lot of trust. But so there are quite a few here. Number 3 is an important one as well, credibility. So credibility, which is you know what you're talking about, has another dimension, which is you love what you do. If you think about Apple, lots of people love Apple because Apple seems to love Apple. Apple seems to pay a great deal of attention to its own product development. It's obsessive about it, and therefore it seems to know what it's talking about. So you get trust from that sort of thing as well. So this is a really handy framework because it enables us with clients, and we've done this with Ben, to start running workshops and to use in-house data, industry data, newly commissioned data. And you can start to look at things like, on point 1 here, what different types of trust relate to which different types of sectors. So there we're comparing cars, which is the yellow blobs, and skincare, which is the blue blob. So you can look at things like competence. This is quite amusing, I think. If you look at competence right at the very bottom, well, people don't really seem to care whether the skincare is competent, whether it works, whether it's reliable, but they do really care about that with cars. So you're quite happy to buy into these wonderful dreams that your skincare is doing great things for you, even though you don't really mind if they don't work. If you look at brand compared to sector, we were doing this during the time that VW and its naughtinesses over emissions started to happen. And we looked at VW relative to its sector, and you can see exactly where very, very quickly it was starting to fall down. Absence of opportunistic behavior, transparency, credibility. Its provenance wasn't touched, its intimacy wasn't touched by that, but those other ones were. So it tells you, when you're in the middle of that crisis, if you're VW, well, here are the bits of trust you need to be working on. Don't worry about that stuff, that's not been hit by it. You can also look, on the third one, at audiences against each other. So millennials, whoever they might be, compared to affluent business people. What are the different trust drivers between them? And you can compare markets, so you can be really clear that India's responding to very different trust drivers from, say, Germany, the UK, or the US. So you can get into really granular detail. That's qualitative. Then comes the fun bit, which is you can feed that into your own channel planning. And that's exactly what we've done with our own channel planning tool, which is CCS. You find those bits. I was going to use a really technical word like correlates, but not correlates. Find the factors, find the variables, you feed them into that, and it will tell you, if you're trying to drive the provenance of a Swiss watch, here's the optimal media to be using. If you're trying to drive the sense of credibility, you're a pharmaceuticals company, you want to talk about how credible you are, there's a totally different way of using media for that. So we can actually now help quite scientifically, as Ben said right at the beginning, media can play a really strong role in driving trust through understanding exactly how you deploy it through media.
And it helps us with, it will help us with driving the right partnerships, whether it be our media partnership, looking at the eight parts of trust, the 8 components of trust. It will help us pick partners. Not just media partners, it will help us pick media partners. It will help us pick other partners, other customers. Customers for us would be, which retailers do we want to work with? Which issuing banks have certain levels of trust than others? It will help us in terms of building those partnerships. It will also help us in terms of community management. It'll help us understand where to be proactive, where to be, it'll help us be reactive. It'll help us figure out what type of message we want to deliver against what type of audience when we're reacting. So it'll help us in those 2 areas.
Yeah. And finally, creative messaging. And so collaborating with the different agency partners to ensure that this data is used all the way through the marketing spectrum and that we're all together driving the relevance that we're looking for, and ultimately creating long-term sustainable relationships with people, which is ultimately why we're all here today. So Ben, Sanjay and I would like to thank you very much for listening.
We're happy to take questions, but I need to make one bitchy comment about a dearly beloved ex-colleague of mine who's sitting next door talking about data. You can have all the data you want in the world. You can organize it as brilliantly as you want, but you can't use it unless your consumers trust you. So you've made the right choice coming here. If you have got questions, we've got a couple of minutes.
We've got a few minutes for questions. If anyone's got any.
Hi, Rick Plater from NBC. It's a question for you, Will. Will, do you apply CCS to the media partners you work with?
Sorry, say that again.
Do you apply CCS to the media partners you work with in terms of trust?
Yeah, we apply it to multiple different parts of the business, and
Yes.
And to all of our clients. It is a service that we offer, and it's one of the data sets that we use.
I mean, in terms of if you had a range of different media owners you work with, would you apply that trust reliability to that?
To media owners.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's more around how consumers will, like different consumer groups will trust media owners in different ways. So we'll use the information from a consumer-centric how consumers react to it's not how Carat thinks that somebody's trustworthy, but more what a certain target audience group will think that they're trustworthy. It's a surrogate to TGI and research like that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Really interesting talk, and really love the campaign you did. I'm wondering how you extended trust beyond the group of people that actually interacted with the campaign.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. We do find ways to, we don't have, our business model is such that while there are 2.1 is our last official number, 2.1 billion cardholders out there, we really don't have a huge amount of relationships because most of our relationships go through every MasterCard you have sitting in your wallet came from whoever you bank with, whether it be, RBS or Santander or whatever part of the world you're from. So we don't have a huge amount of those, we don't have like billions of CRM profile. When we find people who have experiences, we're finding ways to collect them into some of the programs. We have a program called Priceless Cities where we're now in 42 cities around the world where it's basically a program to motivate and inspire people to explore and experience different things around the world. So if you get experiences, we'll channel you through programs like that to try to build a more robust CRM relationship with you. So once you have the experience, then we definitely connect. We definitely show you different experiences because we've seen the long-term value of the more you spend time with me, the more you love me.
Hi, Noam from Playbuzz. From a building trust perspective, what is the right balance between branding and branding on sponsored items, sponsored content and branding? How branded should your sponsored content piece be? Because usually we experience brands pushing hard on advertising and branding pieces of sponsored content. So what's the right balance?
No, can I just repeat the question? Can I just check in that I've understood that? Are you asking about how much branding should you put on the content that you're essentially serving out, and where should the limits be? I have a point of view on this. I wonder, Ben, if you, as a client, have a view on.
I think it's a balance. It's going to be my view would be, and I'm going to give you like a fluffy answer that's not really like specific, and apologies. It depends upon the situation. Like for us, we have different brand equity in different countries. So depending upon the country, depending upon the competitive environment, depending upon the target audience, will drive how the balance should be between driving our brand and driving our business. And I'm sorry that's not a real specific answer. I'm sorry I can't give you the answer is 73. But it really does depend upon a lot of variables.
I think the one thing I would build on that is the confluence of data, content, technology, and the ability to be personal and to be helpful is, this is huge. This is the first time since probably the beginnings of consumer society that we've had a chance to be decent, that we've had a chance actually to do something helpful for consumers. And I suppose I would use that as your mantra or your touchstone. At what point does the consumer feel that you are over-egging it, and then back off? Because actually, if you don't these days, they'll just block you.
One more question?
We've got time for one more.
We have two more.
Oh, goodness me, there are two more. Let's squeeze in two more. There's one there, there's one there. See how nice we are.
People trust us.
Exactly.
Oh, hard luck.
You mentioned ad blocking earlier. As a brand, MasterCard, and as an agency, Carat, do you feel that this is your responsibility to get in front of, or are you trusting the media owners to do the right thing and solve that problem?
It's obviously not the topic we're talking about today, but I'll have an answer. It's everybody's responsibility. My personal point of view, I'm not giving you the it's not the official MasterCard, it's everybody's responsibility. It's our responsibility, it's media owners and it's agencies. I will tell you that there's a lot of marketers, and I sit on the WFA Media Forum. There's a lot of sentiment that media owners are the only marketers are the ones who have the most, to risk, because we're still the ones who are like investing the money, and so there's a lot of angst around that. But it's everybody's responsibility.
Yeah, and I think we were talking before about finding the right forum for everyone to come together and really be able to discuss it and find out the right way forward.
One last question?
Yes, last question. Great, thanks. What's the impact of incentives and payments and discounts to engage on trust? Because obviously, you know, credit cards used to have, there weren't any rewards credit cards. Now everything is a rewards credit card. I mean, so that's one way of getting into the question. Thanks.
Yeah, but even within that, I mean, everybody's, you know, on average, not everybody, not to sound arrogant, on average, people have 5 cards in their wallet. So, you know, it's, you know, our motivation is not so much to put, you know, our driver is not so much to put more cards out there, but to, you know, for you to pull my MasterCard out before you pull out any other product. So programs that we've done, things like the experiences, things we do around, programs we do around Priceless Cities, which is our, you know, local program, things we do around sponsorships, things we'll do around Champions League, things we do, the things like the examples we showed you are our way to kind of motivate and inspire people to, you know, pick my card out because I offer you the opportunity to get some great Priceless experiences that you wouldn't get any other way. So it's just our way to kind of motivate people to pull our card out before anybody else's. Does that answer your question?
Okay.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.